Hello there. This is David from David Books and Comics, and today I want to talk about one of the most successful of all the pulp hero adventurers from the 1930s and 40s, and that was The Shadow. And The Shadow was created by Walter Brown Gibson. Initially, The Shadow was a kind of mysterious voice that introduced a kind of mystery hour on radio. And eventually, the writers of Street and Smith, the publishers of the Shadow novels, and the publishers of also one of the most famous pulp heroes, Doc Savage, they decided, let's put a hero to the voice. And they came and decided to hire a journalist turned writer. His name was Walter Brown Gibson. And he came up with this mysterious, nebulous character called the Shadow. And if you've ever read the very first novel, The Living Shadow, it's almost like he doesn't even exist. He's kind of a mysterious, almost seminal, like invisible figure that hardly appears in the story. Will Murray, in his excellent book, in The Duende History of the Shadow, published, let's have a look, in 1980, gives a very comprehensive information about the shadow. And this is an image of the very first novel. It's called, uh, this is The Living Shadow. This is what the very first novel of the pulp, first appearance of the shadow in the pulps. And book by book, Will Murray gives a very detailed and comprehensive information about how, the shadow and how it was created. He calls them phases, and he explains in these phases what the shadow was like, the supporting characters in the stories, and so on. And he gives one of the most, if not the most comprehensive book that's ever written. This book also includes an original story, one of the last actually, and it's called Blackmail Bay. This is an original novel, an original novella written by Walter Gibson, specifically for this publication, the Duende History of the Shadow. And this is kind of a rare book. I managed to find it in a used bookstore. Um, and one of the things that Walter Gibson was fond of was collecting old maps. And if you've seen some of the covers of the Shadow novels, you'll notice that some of the covers contain maps on the cover. He also provides a listing of all of the Shadow's novels that were published, the original titles, and how many were actually written. 329. And as you can see from the names, W. Gibson, writing as Maxwell Grant, wrote most of the novels. Okay, so I'll present first. I have a near complete set of the paperbacks drawn by the great artist Jim Steranko, but I also have some of the original Shadow uh, pulp magazines. So I'll start by showing those. And I have quite a few of them, so I'll try to go quickly. They're in lower grade. That's why I could afford them. Some of them have been trimmed, and some of them have not. So I'll just go quickly through them. So this is the Devil Master. 1941. And this is a very rough copy of Death by Proxy. This is Castle of Crime. And this is an excellent story. I believe this one's written by Theodore Tinsley. When Walter Gibson was sick or off on vacation, the writer Theodore Tinsley would be the writer who would write most of them, actually. And here is Ciro. This is one of the first that I ever bought. Very rough copy. This is the Chinese Primrose. This is the Red Blot. This is Gems of Jeopardy. It's Canadian edition, very rough copy. The Wasp Returns. And this is Wizard of Crime. This is Death in the Stars. We'll move that aside. Oh, this is a very rough copy. This is River of Death. This one also has been trimmed. This is Twins of Crime. Oh, beautiful cover if it hadn't been trimmed. This is the Green Hoods. Again, these are reading copies, but complete. This one has a facsimile cover. This is Isle of Gold. This has also been trimmed, which we all know devalues the book. Here's another. This is complete copy, complete reading copy, that is. Serpents of Siva. This has a facsimile cover. Crime at Seven Oaks. This is The League of Death. May 1941. Another trimmed copy. The Blur. July 1941. Another trimmed. Formula of Crime. This is The Money Master. This is The Vindicator. This has a facsimile cover. This is The Golden Master. And this is one of the Jade Dragon, also trimmed. This is The Voodoo Master. This is Debt's Premium. This is The Condor. Again, as you can see, there's a map in the background. Walter Gibson was very fond of collecting maps. That was his main hobby. And this is the Prince of Evil. And this has a facsimile cover. This one is The Crime Master. So those are some of the, and these were all, as you can imagine, inexpensive because they were lower grade and many of them were trimmed. You can get them in modern editions. This is features two Shadow novels, The Salamanders and The Black Falcon. And this was published by um, Sanctum Productions Nostalgia Ventures Incorporated. And it captures the original artwork, features great introductions, again by the pulp expert Will Murray, and plus articles, along with pictures of what Walter Gibson looked like when he began writing this series, and features articles. So this has these two, and then I have the Cobra and the Third Shadow, Road of Crime and Crooks Go Straight, The Madrigal's Mystery and Serpents of Siva, The Grove of Doom, City of Crime and Shadow over Alcatraz, The Chinese Discs and Malmordo. Like any great series, The Shadow also featured recurring villains, and you've seen a few of them as I was flipping through the pulps. There's the Blur, the Crime Master, but the most dangerous one was this fellow, Shiwan Khan, who appeared in 4 of the Shadow novels. And this is the cover of one of the Shadow novels. This was a reprint edition that came out just in 1967 by the copier, in 1984, The Shadow and the Golden Master. So it features Shiwan Khan, the Golden Master, and Shiwan Khan Returns, 2 of the great Shadow stories. It's an original. Features the original facsimile. It's a facsimile of the original novels. And I also have The Shadow came out in different reprint editions. This is one of the later novels, and this is of 8 and the Freak Show Murders. These are earlier Shadow reprints. Gives you a complete list of all of the Shadow novels. And this came out in 1979. And then there's Mask of Mephisto and Murder by Magic. Nice. There's a picture of Walter Gibson. And there's various editions, early editions of The Shadow. And this is The Weird Adventures of the Shadow is an introduction, and it has 3 novels, Voodoo Death, Grove of Doom, and Murder by Moonlight. Now I want to show the main point of this presentation is to show you the excellent Shadow stories and novels that was published by Pyramid Books And this is the first. It's a Steranko cover, and it's a low-grade spine roll. It's the only one I have ever found of this book, the first one. This is simply titled The Living Shadow. And it's the very first story, and it features a Steranko cover. And it came out 1974. For many of us, this is one of the very first times that we we read or heard of The Shadow. This is a different edition, also by Jim Steranko, and of the first novel. This one is published by Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. This is The Living Shadow, the same story, but different cover, same artist. And this is actually the first one I ever read. And what I remember when I read it is that you never see the shadow. He's kind of an obscure, almost invisible figure in the whole story. Compared to the Lester Dent, Kenneth Ropes, and Doc Savage novels, um, you always knew who the main hero was. With the shadow, uh, perhaps maybe because of the uh, the nature of the character and because of the style of the writing and because of the fact that Walter Gibson was a magician, the Shadow was always a kind of a mystery character. You never knew who he was or if he was even real. I'll get into that a little bit later. And here's the next novel. This is Mobsman of the Spot. Nice cover. And here's a nice, it's got creases. It's the only edition I've ever found of this. This is Hands in the Dark. This is a beautiful, very fine copy, double Z. And this is another fine copy, The Crime Cult, number 8. This is number 7. That's number 6, sorry. This is number 7, The Red Menace. Again, these all feature Jim Steranko covers. This is number 8, Mox. I'll just make room here. Make more room. I want to show you something about the Shadow stories. The Shadow never worked alone. He always had assistants. And in this book, the Shadow Scrapbook, credit to Walter Brown Gibson. I'll show you it's an excellent book with feature articles and an original story, The Riddle of the Rangoon Ruby. So that's an original novella published just for this book. So in this book we have an original novella, and in this book we have an original novella. And let's see if I can find them. Oh, here they are. These beautiful color representations of the Shadow novels. Yeah, the Shadow never worked alone. He always worked with assistants. And this is some of the depictions. One of the main characters that you would see is this fellow. This is Harry Vincent. Then you have Detective Joe Cardona, Rutledge Man, Burbank, Clyde Burke, crime reporter, Cliff Marsland, who worked in the crime world. He was a kind of a criminal, pretended to be a criminal, but he was a shadow proxy hero. And this is Wainwright Barth, the police commissioner, Slade Farrow, criminologist, allied to the Shadow, Vic Marquette, Secret Service, Hawkeye, another one of the people that worked in the crime world, Tapper, another crime world person, Pietro. This is actually Inspector Klein. There's also the real Lamont Cranston. There's Lamont Cranston. If you've read the Shadow novels, Lamont Cranston was simply an alias. It was never his real persona. Then you have Dr. Roy Tam, featured in the movie from 1996 Shadow film with Alec Baldwin. And one that doesn't show up here is a character named Jericho Druk, who shows in a few of the Shadow novels. So that's that. So the Shadow, the real identity of the Shadow wasn't revealed until much later in the stories. And in this novel, the Shadow unmasks, depicted here, is this fellow, Kent Allard. And this was the first time in this novel that the Shadow revealed himself, or it was revealed who the Shadow really was, is this aviator hero from the First World War named Kent Allard. In the later novels, all of that original uh, origin of the original hero was all obscured, and it ended up being largely because of the radio show. Um, the alias they stuck with Lamont Cranston. That's who you saw in the film. But those who've read the novels and know the history know that the Shadow was really Kent Allard. So this is number 9, the Romanoff Jewels, a nice Jim Steranko cover. This is The Silent Seven. Kings of Crime. And this is Shadowed Millions. Very good to near fine copy. Shadowed Millions. And there's the copyright. Pyramid edition, published 1976. Nice tight copy. Very nice. It's number 12. And there's another version of the Shadowed Millions. I think it's a better cover done by Jim Steranko. Number 12. This one's published by, it's called a Jove book. Harcourt, Brace, Jovanovich, Jove book. So there's that. There's Green Eyes, number 13. Here's another alternative cover, Pyramid, number 14. Oh, no, sorry, this is an original, 14. The Creeping Death. Here's another fine copy, Greyfist, number 15. This is an excellent story. Here's number 16, The Shadow's Shadow. Number 17, Fingers of Death. again, Jim Steranko cover. This is a Jove book. There's number 18. There's the Zeppelin, number 18, Murder Trail. This is number 19. This is Zemba. And this is number 20 with a next science fiction theme. Charg Monster. Excellent read. Damsel in Distress Steranko cover. The Wealth Seeker, another fine copy. Number 21. Here's number 22, The Silent Death. Nice cover. Steranko cover. And we can flip through this one. This is number 23, The Death Giver. Beautiful cover. Steranko. HBJ, First Jove, 1978. From the Shadow magazine, 1933. So this is the last of the ones that I have from the Jove books. The Shadow was not nearly as successful in paperback as the Doc Savage novels. A book dealer that I spoke with said he felt that the Shadow continuity didn't flow very well if they started in chronologically from the first novel um, and serially as they did here with this company. Whereas Bantam Books that published the Doc Savage novels picked the books at random. However, either way, I think for reading purposes, I prefer myself to read the Shadow novels rather than the Doc Savage novels because of the continuity. There's an evolution of the character throughout the novels as the story goes on. The Bantam Books also published some of the Shadow novels. The covers were kind of dark and garish, and they were not nearly as good as the Jim Steranko covers, but I'll show you some of those. This is The Shadow Laughs. And this is The Death Tower. And this is The Eyes of the Shadow. And this is Gangdom's Doom. This is Hidden Death. And as you can see, they're nowhere near as good as the Jim Steranko pyramid covers. And this is The Ghost Makers. So let me take this away and I'll show you some more. Now, in the 1960s, Walter Gibson wrote this book. It's called The Return of the Shadow. However, when it was released, Gibson was not happy because Belmont released it without his full consent. And so he repudiated this novel. I mean, it had his story, but he didn't approve of it. He repudiated it, and the subsequent writers had to revert to writing as Maxwell Grant, but without the support of Walter Gibson. And here are the subsequent novels. This is The Shadow Strikes. And these novels, for people who've read The Shadow, are unsatisfactory in terms of the continuity of the character. they feel that this is not the Shadow that they knew in the pulps and in the novels that you saw, reprints from pyramid books. They were more like spy mystery novels. In and of themselves, as mystery novels, they are good reads. So I'll show you the rest. This is The Shadow Strikes. And this is a fine copy of The Shadow Beware or Shadow Beware. And this is another version. This looks like this is from Starbooks. This is an Australian, I believe, publication. Shadow Beware. This is Cry Shadow. Nice tight, near fine copy. Shadow's Revenge. This is another near fine to fine copy. Mark of the Shadow. And this is Shadow Go Mad. You can see published by Belmont, but without Walter Brown Gibson's blessing. And if you can imagine, The Shadow Destination Moon by Maxwell Grant. And this is Night of the Shadow. Beautiful covers. Just look through the novel Cry Shadow. Yeah, just nice, tight copy. Copyright. This paper, these are paperback originals. Cry Shadow. Nice to have. Again, if you're a Shadow, a fan of the Shadow, you won't be satisfied with this version of the Shadow. He's like a James Bond spy, which is not who the Shadow is. And this is not one of my favorite presentations of the Shadow. This is Grove of Doom, reprint of Grove of Doom, with a very actually ugly cover. Okay, so that's my meager collection of the Shadow. Um, my I'm not sure that I have all of the pyramid uh, paperbacks of the Shadow, but I will be keeping my eyes open and seeing if there's anything that comes up that's new that I haven't seen before, because I don't know if they've reprinted the first pyramid Shadow books. They reprinted the first one, but I don't know if they've reprinted others. All right, so that's my Shadow foray into the Shadow. Um, and I just wanted to share one little bit. You see here a picture of um, this fellow, who many of you recognize from the movie Citizen Kane. That's Orson Welles. That's because in 1937, with his radio studio company called the Mercury Theater, Orson Welles showed, or was one of the first to voice the Shadow on radio, and some people consider him to be the best version of the Shadow in the media ever. So anyway, so I hope you enjoyed. I'll just flip through some of the color images from the center of this book. Beautiful covers. a lot of these stories, or sorry, a lot of these books, covers of these books, these pulps, were done by a guy named George Rosen. Um, and the look of the Shadow with his beaked eagle-like nose and the kind of Dracula cape um, was really created by him, by George Rosen. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this little foray into the Shadow and the Shadow paperbacks. And if you did, give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and I'll show you more of my collection. Okay, thanks. Bye.